Ben Franklin Transit Board members and county commissioners are meeting to discuss cutting transit service revenue in exchange for voters approving a new tax for mental health. KVU's Ellie Nakamoto-White is live at the Ben Franklin Transit Center in Kennewick. And Ellie, tell us, if this does go through, how much would be cut?
Hey, Maddie. Well, if the transit service does agree to the commissioner's requests, they could be looking at a near $7 million tax revenue cut. Now, ultimately, it is up to the board to decide if they're going to put the request for voters to cut their taxes on the ballot in November. Benton and Franklin County commissioners sending letters to the Ben Franklin Transit Board requesting the board looks at reducing its current sales tax rate by 1 cent per $10 in order to take action on funding the proposed mental health facility.
These are the things that need to be discussed. Where do we want transit? What do we want transit to look like?
Transit Board Chair Richard Bloom says the reduction represents 15% of the Transit Board's revenue.
I'm not opposed to looking at that, but to come back and say, well, let's just cut the budget 15% and see what happens. I guess the right word would be it's not a responsible way of approaching a necessary function for the Tri-Cities.
BFT General Manager Gloria Boyce says she's certain the board will move forward with a plan that's in the best interest of the riders.
They haven't talked about what their actual funding need is to operate the facility.
Commissioners have the money to create the facility, but it just comes down to a matter of funding to run it. This is where the mental health tax would come in to pay for services not covered by the health insurance revenue.
It isn't necessary to reduce transit funding for the county commissioners to approve an increased sales tax, which would generate about $9 million a year.
Bloom says while there's, quote, no question the board could cut back, the discussion needs to be had for how it'll impact riders.
We as a transit board have to be responsible with the funds. If we don't want to grow with the Tri-Cities, well, the transit board can make that decision.
The board is hosting their first in-person meeting since the pandemic tonight in Richland at 7 p.m. Now it is open to the public, but know that if you do go, you will be required to wear a mask and follow all of the other COVID-19 safety guidelines. Live in Kennewick, Ellie Nakamoto-White, KVU Local News.